All right, this is a really, really interesting and kind of difficult topic to talk about, but we're talking about like how do you know if there's something clinically going on, if maybe there's a parenting miscommunication between yourself and the child, or do maybe you have like unrealistic expectations and you don't really know what's age appropriate. So we're going to talk about this today. Let us know where you're watching in from. My name is Dale Ecuyer, and I help families create health and harmony using holistic mental wellness solutions. And Karen is with me again today. So, Karen, let us know what's going on with all this. How do we decipher, like, between, a child that maybe you're thinking is like something wrong, or maybe it's just some parenting tweaking that needs to happen, or so give us your insights and your wisdom on this one.
Absolutely, Dale. And the more I'm working with families and using the foundation of the parenting blueprint, which is the understanding of personalities and temperaments, um, we can recognize that certain personality traits pushed too far can become a weakness. And especially if there are traits that we don't understand. So if a child is acting and responding in a way that's different than us, the first thing we want to think is there something wrong with my child? Now, when I share personality information with families, it's almost as though someone has taken off the blinders and I can see life through a different lens, the lens of my child, because they act and respond differently than me. So I want to give a couple of suggestions of some things. And I've trained on this, and I'm going to do another training on this in Parent by Design that's in much more detail.
When we looked at the DISC model, we look at pace and priority. And so we look at the outgoing, fast-paced personalities or the more reserved, slower-paced personalities. And what I had found is that kids who are, I hate to use the word labeled, or maybe diagnosed or be considered as ADHD, usually have the outgoing personalities that are fast-paced. So can you see a fast-paced child being labeled as hyperactive? Can we start there? Okay, with those types of traits. And the attention deficit is usually in a child who's a little bit more reserved, unsure, not motivated, not making decisions. And when we look at the personality traits of the different quadrants that we looked at, the dominant, inspiring, supportive, and cautious, and we start looking at ADHD traits and even ADD traits, even ODD traits, oppositional defiance, the OCD traits, we can easily see how they could fit into a personality style. Now, I am not saying that these disorders are not real. They are. But when you have a child who is acting and responding differently than you, we can be almost tempted to want to label that as compared to just recognizing that the child is just wired differently than you. So I'll give you an example. The ADHD kids are more outgoing, and they can be considered fast-paced individuals. But in the dominant style in particular, they tend to be stubborn. They tend to be argumentative. They tend to have their temper tantrums. They tend to be manipulative at times. And so the same thing goes for an ADHD child, but maybe of the inspiring style. Now, remember, the inspiring style is fast-paced, people-oriented. It's not about the task. So some of the blind spots of the inspiring style may be that they don't follow through. They're disorganized, or they're distracted. They have short attention spans. They're so forgetful. Well, is that not very typical of ADHD characteristics? They can say that they don't finish a task. They have trouble getting organized. They're easily distracted. They don't stay focused on things for long. They forget things all the time. Like, they're almost identical when you look at checking the boxes. And so my caution to parents before we want to label our children is to identify, are these behaviors happening and where they're happening? So if these behaviors are happening, there's three areas that I want to look at. One area is at home. The second area is at school. And the third area is in their community and in their circle. If some of these behaviors are happening in one of these areas, so let's say the kid's good at school, but they're a challenge at home. We have mild case. This is a mild something. We can work with this. We can adapt our interactions and get this under control. Or maybe the child is having trouble at school, but not necessarily at home. Again, a mild case, and not necessarily needing medication or needing anything intense. We can work with this. But if it is happening in all three areas, the child is struggling with his relationships with friends, he's struggling at school, and he's struggling at home, then we need to get help. So my goal is to empower parents with the tools themselves to be able to become aware of how their child is wired, adapt their interactions, and apply the right strategy so the child feels understood. Now, please don't take this the wrong way. When we are frustrated with the kid and we have come to the end of our rope, I don't know what else to do. The first thing we want to do is get the child help. So we either want to put the child in therapy, we want to put the child on medication. I would rather empower the parents with the tools to connect with that child and embrace their diversity and how different they are and help them manage those behaviors through our parenting interactions so the child is not going through life feeling as though there's something wrong with me. Is that making sense, Dale? I mean,
Yes, it's so powerful.
It is a very sensitive topic, and I don't want any parent to feel bad if they are struggling. You're struggling because you cannot do what you do not know. And when I've shared this information, it's like, now I get it. So I'll give you an example, personal example. My son, Kyle, is the dominant and cautious style. It's his way is the right way. No other way. He is a black and white kid. And I've had professionals say he has ODD, oppositional defiant disorder tendencies. And he did at home. And maybe but you know what? But was I going to label Kyle, or did I need to parent him? Anyone who's worked with me has heard Kyle's stories, okay? Anyone who's worked with me has heard Kyle's stories. But Kyle was going to have to learn what was going to be acceptable at home by setting boundaries. He was going to learn what was acceptable at school, including failing if you're choosing to not do your work. He was going to have to learn what was going to be acceptable in the workplace when he got his job, in his relationships with his friends. But I didn't want to label him. I wanted him to learn through life experiences how to manage his behavior, his personality, his temperaments in the real world.
Wow.
Now, in our more reserved personalities, I know I spent a lot of time talking about the hyperactive. In the reserved personalities, the ADD, attention deficit, they're a little bit more reserved, so they're a little bit more apathetic. And so, some of the traits of the supportive style could be that, they like to be alone. They carry fear of the unknown. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just different. The same thing with our cautious personality. Again, they're more, they can be moody. They're perfectionists. They can be critical. They don't communicate because they internalize. They don't speak, but it's in their heads. These can all be ADD characteristics, which say they can get depressed. They hold on to the negatives or sensitive to criticism. Yes. But so is the cautious personality. So do I want to label my child, or do I want to say, this is how God has wired my child? There are amazing traits here. How can I help my child be the best they can be according to their design without a label attached to it? So, okay. So I know this is a very... controversial. I don't want parents to feel bad if they've gone the route of medication, if they've gone the route of therapy. But what I am saying is that parents, if you are struggling with these behaviors, let's work together. I want to empower you so that your child will feel as, even though I've got these quirky tendencies, my mom gets me. My dad gets me. They understand me. And that I don't have to feel as though there's something wrong with me, or I need to take medication to just function. So I am not a medical doctor. I just specialize in human behavior. And when I saw these overlapping traits, and I saw so many parents, and I know parents that your heart aches when you can't interact with your child in a way that you're in conflict all the time.
I mean, I have never heard of this. This is so interesting to me. It really is. And like you said, we want the best for our kids. This is not like trying to make anyone feel bad about it. It's like the more, how's it go? The more you know, the better you do. Or I mean,
Absolutely.
it's something
Yes.
it's definitely something to consider and something to think about, because I know that label can go into their life, and like you said, it can impact them thinking there's something wrong with me. You know what I mean? And that we don't want, because there isn't. But
And some kids, you know,
really good.
yeah. And in some kids, I feel as they get older, they use it as an excuse. Well, I didn't have my medication today, or, you know, because we've not taught the dominant personality that they still have to live under authority, and it's not them, you know, and for the inspiring, that we need to help them to focus and to not be so impulsive. But we do this by step strategies of our interactions, you know, and the same thing with the more reserved personalities, that you need to encourage them to take risks, to make a decision, that to step by step, it's okay. And for the child who's the perfectionist, and I've seen that, you know, the OCD, things need to be a certain way, or they just really start to have panic attacks. So how can I work with them and say, it's okay to make a mistake, and we will get through this, and we can walk our kids through this, feel understood for who they are, that you think certain, but I mean, there's something wrong with you. It's living in your temperament and understanding that all kids are quirky in different ways. I mean, I remember when Kyle was little. Now Kyle's dominant cautious. If he had a piece of oatmeal on his finger, you would have thought something was major going on, because there was a piece of food on his hand, where Eric could be covered with mud and not care. You know what I mean? He just didn't care. And so it's not that it's right or wrong, it's different. So can I understand that Kyle needs to have things a certain way, and that it's important that things are a certain way? Yes. Can I understand that's not the same for Eric? Doesn't have to be a certain way, because he flies by the seat of his pants. And so when we can see our kids through a different lens, then we don't have to use the labels. We can now be empowered, because we have a parenting blueprint to understand our kids, become aware, adapt our interactions, and apply the right strategies so our kids feel valued and understood, raising them to be the best they can be according to their design.
I love it. It's so powerful. And you have the parenting blueprint. I have the link there for you to take it. And so you can recognize and identify what that is for yourself as well, because that's going to give you a lot of insight if you understand your blueprint as well as your child's.
Yeah.
So Karen, you have something coming up that you're going to go deeper into this. Tell us about that.
Because I have spent so much time in some of the parenting groups, and I see parents are struggling, I am going to be doing a training on this. So I'm working on it now. I don't have it scheduled, but jump on into the Parent by Design group, my Facebook group, because you'll see that I'm posting things when I'm doing trainings. I have the training on Wednesday night about taming the teen attitude and reconnecting with your teen. And then I'm going to be putting together this training here on understanding your personality and what people may consider as personality disorders. But I really want to empower the parents to have the vision to understand their kids. And I want to empower them so they don't feel so helpless and unsure about how to deal with behaviors, because this is real. You know, my kids were all quirky in certain ways. You know, my daughter was unsure, maybe prone to a little bit of, people, I could look at her and say that she's depressed. Why? Because she likes to be alone. She wants to be by herself. She didn't like big groups. And I'm outgoing with everybody. I make a friend everywhere I go. And I'm thinking there's something wrong with my child. But when I understood that's just how she is, then I can make sure that she has her downtime, that she has time to chill. And when we see other people that are different than us, right? Why am I not like this? And it's not right or wrong. It's just different. God has wired each of us from birth for a purpose. And our goal is to find that purpose.
Yes. Amen, sister.
Yes.
So
Can you tell I'm a little passionate about this? And again, I know this is a sensitive topic, and I don't want to alienate anybody. All I want to do is educate with more knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the better decisions you can make. And I am here to support, encourage, and inspire and walk alongside you. So parents, you are empowered. You have the confidence to say, I understand my kid.
Amazing. I mean, this parenting thing is not easy, and every single child is different. So it's like we need so much information, but once we have the understanding, we have the skills, and I think hiring a coach at this time with everything that's going on is probably your best investment ever. So Karen, thank you for being with me again today.